Should we like look straight in?
Yeah. Yeah, look straight in. We'll come really close. Ooh.
Hello everyone and welcome to Games Week. Of course, I am repping the program, and unfortunately, although not all our originally qualified athletes will be competing, our athlete Gabriela Migala will be representing the program this year at the Games, and so we're here to keep you up to date with everything we know so far about how the Games format will be, what the workouts will be or how they will be performed, and show you some behind the scenes of how Gabriela and head coach of the program, John Singleton, have prepared her to perform at her best during this weekend. So first off, let's break down what we know of the Games this year and how the event will be held. We have 30 athletes, male and female. We went over the qualification process and the different phases in our previous Games update video, so if you want to look at it, you can check it out through the link over here. The athletes will be competing for top 5 female and top 5 male, which will be the athletes that eventually go and take on phase 2 at Dave's Castor Ranch in Aromas, California. So, how is this weekend gonna go? On Friday and Saturday, athletes will be performing 2 events. The first one has a time frame from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. The second one starts at 12 p.m. and finishes at 3 p.m. This means that athletes have 3 hours to perform the given event. They will only have 1 shot to do it. There are no double takes. That means once they start the timer for their workout, there's no going back. Also, we mentioned the time frames, but you may ask, how does that work given that there's so many athletes all over the globe? In fact, 15 countries will be represented at this Games edition. That means that each athlete will be performing in their own time zone. So Australian athletes, for example, will have from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. of the Australian time zone. Same for European athletes and American athletes, and so on. That also means that the scores need to be confidential until the event is finished for all the athletes. This is to avoid situations where athletes from time zones such as America are put at an advantage compared to athletes from further on time zones such as Europe or Australia. As a reminder, there is $1.3 million at stake for the top 20 female and males. So the top athlete coming out of this first phase will also win $300K. In typical Dave Castro style, on Tuesday he posted a picture where he spoilered the name for the 4 events going into Friday and Saturday, and it looks like it's gonna be a blast from the past, with names like Friendly Fran, Damn Diane, Awful Annie, and Nasty Nancy. We all know what the athletes are going to look into. These are the girls. They're benchmarks for every CrossFitter. These workouts have been here since the start of CrossFit, so it will be really like looking back into the beginning of CrossFit. And I wanted to know how having the Games continually being pushed back and the different changes in formats and number of athletes, how can that have impacted the type of training he had Gabriela do to prepare for the Games? As we mentioned in the previous video, of course, preparing an event like the Games looks quite different than preparing the Open or other competitive events because the style of workouts is slightly different. But having something like an online Games changes how the athlete will be approaching the event, because there's probably going to be less triathlon style or workouts or obstacle workouts and more of your typical open workout. And that's exactly what John will be answering today. So let's cut right into it.
In essence, the season started with this year's Open, which took place in October 2019. And we are now in mid-September 2020, and it's finally going to be the first stage of the CrossFit Games. So we're very lucky to have Gabby, who's a Progrm athlete, and she's been training, preparing here where we all live in Mallorca, Spain. And I think that any athlete who's qualified and any athlete who hasn't qualified would agree that this is, it's been very hard for them. The obvious factor with all this uncertainty becomes motivation, and that's one of the things that I actually think we've been quite lucky with. Gabby has a great training group around her at the moment. She has Christoph, her boyfriend, and she has Jacqueline as well, another Progrm athlete. They've managed to keep the training level high, and so we're extremely excited to see Gabby compete this weekend. So in terms of structuring the training for Gabby, it is obviously tricky in terms of programming as well, because that if you're going to be going to a competition, there's lots more variables they can introduce. They can introduce swimming, they can introduce long distance terrain running, they can work with more odd objects. However, when you're in the gym, especially if they want to try and make the competition fair and relevant, there's only so much that they can use. And this does affect the training. All of a sudden open water swimming becomes a lot less relevant, long trail running becomes a lot less relevant, and we start to see our quintessential CrossFits, like couplets, triplets, using a gymnastic bar and a weightlifting bar, and obviously some form of machine. They recently announced now that we have the only machine that's going to be involved is the Concept 2 rower. And so obviously training starts to become more specialized because you don't have as many variables. The other factor is, obviously an athlete can't just constantly train without having periods of deload. And so with the constant shifting, kind of implementing the structured deload has been a bit more tricky. We found out, originally the game's supposed to be taking place a few weekends ago, was the kind of latest update. So we scheduled the training for Gabby to be peaking at that weekend. Then obviously they changed the date and changed the format to going online, and that meant we restructured the deload and the peaking. It wasn't necessarily an ideal fit because we were prepping for a weekend that was 2 weeks ago, and now we're prepping for this weekend, and also with fewer variables as mentioned. There's also different factors that are involved. There's only certain time frames that they have available, and that means that the overall volume of the competition, it's harder to go to something like the games, where in previous years, they've had to be up at like 3 or 4 in the morning. They then had to go to swim, they then had to come back. They've only got a short time before they go to the next event, and there's a lot more uncertainty during or kind of intra-event. Whereas now, before the workout, before the games, or stage 1 of the games start, we're going to know everything, and that means we can put together a lot more structured plan. Gabby's going to be sleeping in her own bed each night. She has her own kitchen, she can prepare her own food. Everything is like a training day. And so for the athletes who feel a lot more comfortable competing in the home environment and enjoy that structure, it's obviously a huge advantage. Also, what we start to see in the sport of CrossFit is that some athletes are very good at qualifiers and some athletes are very good at live competitions. And now obviously stage 1 has been favoured to these qualifying athletes who seem to perform better in their own gym compared to the people who perform better on a live stage. And so, we will see that the top 5 going through to stage 2 of the games this weekend are separated by, probably not even 1 kilo or even a few seconds. And so these variables make a huge difference. And there's also good points that certain athletes have brought up, and that is that the running track makes a big difference. I'm sweating currently now, it's like 32 degrees. And we know that heat, when it gets past a certain point, starts to decrease performance. We also know that if someone's running into a headwind and back, that's also going to affect their running time. You know, transitions, the height of the bar, if someone's got different type of plates, all of these variables are, you know, become significant factors with a level of athlete that we're talking about that will be separated by milliseconds and fractions of a kilo.
I'm Gabriela Migala and I'm gonna compete in 2020 games.
And how old are you?
I'm 21 years old.
And how many times have you competed at the CrossFit Games?
It's gonna be my third time. I went to the games for the first time in 2016 as a teenage athlete, and it was something special. This experience made me realize that I really want to compete in the sport as a professional, because back then I used to play tennis as well, so I wasn't sure yet if I want to do CrossFit for real or just only one-time thing. But should I say like mine? So after standing on the podium on the third place and in being at the tennis stadium in Carson, California, I realized this is the best feeling and I just want to do this. So
tell us first of all how it was being fittest in Poland, and then just let me know a little bit about how you found the change going from a teenager at the games to going to an elite athlete at the games.
Of course, I was very proud to be the fittest in my country, because it's not a small thing, but I wasn't. It wasn't satisfying enough, because the CrossFit in Poland it's not that big, and it's not a lot of girls who are competing, so it wasn't very big thing to be the fittest in Poland.
And how was it different competing in the elite compared to competing in the team category?
Or it's like a completely different story. Competing as a teenage athlete, there's a space, there's a room for holes and mistakes, and even then, when you have some holes and weaknesses, you can still end up being on the podium. But when you have some even small weakness and you want to be the best with competing with the elite girls, there's no option to do that. You have to be perfect and you have to be good in everything, so there's no room for weaknesses. So 2019 games were very special, because it was the first year when they announced the cutting system. So after each event they were cutting half of the field almost. I got cut after first event, so my CrossFit Games experience last year was very short. The workouts included legless rope climbs, which are my one of the biggest weakness. So, like I said before, if you want to accomplish something big in elite CrossFit, there is no room for weakness. So this was my weakness. That's why I got cut.
So, you know, you've made some pretty big changes in your life. You're only 21 years old, and you've made the move from your home country, living at your parents'. You're now in Mallorca, Spain, and you know, really to go full time as a professional athlete. And how has that change been for you?
Like, I don't regret that decision. I think it's the best decision I ever made. And of course, at the beginning it was very scary, because like moving from your home house to different country with only your boyfriend, it's a very scary thing to do, but I'm very happy about this decision. Like, Mallorca is the best. I think it's the best place to train. The weather is amazing. I have a coach here at the gym with me every day, so he can look at me and fix stuff, and that's amazing.
Obviously, like, the hardest period for many athletes during this time was when everything got locked down. Like, gyms across the whole world closed. What were you guys doing during that period?
During the lockdown, we pack our stuff, we grab some equipment from the gym, and we moved to our coach's farm, and we trained there. It was a very good place for training. We set everything perfectly. We had a small weightlifting platform, plates, barbell. We could run a lot. We did rope climbs on the tree, ring muscle up on the tree, so we didn't lose our fitness gains there.
Mentally, how have you handled the uncertainty of the past couple of months?
It was very challenging period, and at the beginning there, when they announced the lockdown, no one knows if the game's gonna happen, so the training was very hard for me. I was struggling to motivate myself to push during the workouts and everything. So after 5 weeks of feeling very demotivated, I just thought that there is no point to feel like this, and it's not gonna be helpful. So I decided that I'm gonna take opportunity, and I'm just gonna use the spirit to improve, and that's what I did. It was also hard because they were postponing the games all the time. So at the beginning they cut the field, so there was no fit test in the country. They decide they're gonna invite 30 people to the States, but then the travel was impossible from the people outside the US. And a few weeks ago they decide that it's going to be online, so there was a lot of changes, but yeah, it is what it is, and it's better to have something than nothing, so I'm pretty happy about the online games.
What are you most looking forward to this weekend?
So I'm looking forward to test myself and look how much progress I made during the lockdown times. Even though that this year's games are different, I would like to prove myself and everyone else that I can do better than only one event like I did last year, and I want to show everyone else what I can do. I'm Gabriela Migala, I'm the fittest woman in Poland, and I will be competing in 2020 games.
So in general, things kick off tomorrow. We have, so we've been selected, or Gabby's been selected, a judge who's going to come to CrossFit 23. So we're going to mark off an area which you guys will see. The judge has to weigh every barbell, every plate, check that the rower is calibrated properly, measure the run route, and in essence try and make things as level playing field as possible for every athlete. And then on Friday, so in 2 days time, the competition is going to kick off at 9 o'clock our time. We'll be keeping you updated through the weekend, trying to get you some good content, and also get you to know how Gabby's feeling, how the events went and how they felt. Gabby herself, no one's going to know any results until the last group of athletes have finished, and then in theory they publish the results so we can find out what's going on. So a strange year for everyone. Those who are making the best of it are obviously going to be at an advantage. For the athletes who unfortunately haven't qualified this year, I think they're looking forward to the 2020 season finishing and they can focus on 2021. For the athletes who have qualified, I think they're also looking forward to marking on the sand in the 2020, and they're looking forward to getting after it this weekend. Obviously it's going to be a hard ask for any one athlete to qualify into that top 5 and move on to stage 2, and so we're very much focused on giving everything this weekend and seeing what comes out of it.